Hello, all, and welcome to our panel on 5G regulations, light touch, and finding the right balance. Regulations have a key role to play in industry progress. For start, a light touch and clear regulatory framework helps fuel interest and growth thereon. However, this is easier said than done, considering the complex ecosystem and the need to balance the interest of suppliers and the consumers. 5G is just not a niche, complicatory, or regulatory issue. All parts of the global economy will be affected. Based on the research done at KPMG, it is expected that $4.3 trillion in value is waiting to be unlocked across major industries on the back of 4G, or 5G, sorry. The success of 5G deployment is intertwined with several such considerations. Considering a connected world, interoperability is a critical component of global telecommunications policy. Technical standards and spectrum harmonization for wireless services are vital for 5G success. Regional and national decisions on spectrum band allocation, technical or licensing conditions will affect the ability to fully deploy 5G domestically and abroad. To top it all, regulation at the ground level that governs the enabling infrastructure is another key aspect that needs to be kept in sight. These decisions will also impact the ability of players in the 5G ecosystem to leverage economies of scale. To deliberate on this and more, we have an exclusive roundtable of select executives which will discuss on both the opportunities and challenges in these key areas. We have Chairman Pai from the Federal Communications Commission of the US, Chairman Vaghela from Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, who will discuss ways the US and India can elevate the current digital engagement, while our industry leaders will prioritize areas and ways to optimize this engagement. Let me introduce all of them to you. As I mentioned, Mr. Ajit Pai, he's the chairman of US Federal Communications Commission. Mr. Pai has been with the FCC for over 9 years now, prior to which he worked in Jenner and Block. He served as the commissioner at FCC for 5 years and took on the office of the chairman at FCC in January of 2017. We have Mr. Dr. P.D. Vaghela. He's the chairman of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Prior to this, he was the secretary of the Department of Pharmaceuticals under the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Chairman Vaghela is the Gujarat cadre IAS officer of 1986 batch, and amongst his many credits include his key role in the rollout of GST in India in 2000. We have Monica Desai. She is the global head of connectivity and access policy at Facebook, where she focuses on issues involving infrastructure, spectrum, accessibility, online communication service providers, and net neutrality. Prior to joining Facebook, she spent over a decade in senior positions at the FCC in the US. We have Marc Vancoppenolle. He's the global head of government relations at Nokia. Marc has been with Nokia for approximately 30 years. Since 2016, Marc is leading the global government relations, function at Nokia, and his responsibilities include policy and regulatory affairs, as well as the leadership of Nokia's advocacy activities around the globe. We have Mr. Rajesh Gangadhar. He's the CTO and head of access solutions at STL. Raj disruptive wireless technologies for last mile connectivity at STL. In this role, he is responsible for driving new business growth through the development of advanced access products, which include 5G, software-defined networking, virtualization, and artificial intelligence, and leveraging open innovation and customer-centric research and development. We have Mr. P. Balaji. He's the Chief Regulatory and Corporate Affairs Officer at Vodafone India, and leads the company's regulatory, public policy, and government relations activities, along with the industry advocacy, corporate communications, reputation management, and CSR. He's a member of the core leadership team at Vodafone India, and this leadership team has successfully recently implemented the planning and execution of the largest telecom merger in terms of customers, which were almost 275 million between Vodafone and Idea Cellular in India. We have Rob Weisbord. He's president of Sinclair Broadcasting at Sinclair since 2020 Jan. He has been with Sinclair Broadcasting Group for more than 23 years, and he is responsible for all revenues, programming, promotions, operations of the legacy TV group, including the multicast network channels, Ring of Horror, etc. A position is held since December 2019. We have Rahul Vatts. Rahul is the Chief Regulatory Officer at Bharti Airtel Limited. With nearly 25 years of experience, Rahul is an expert on telecom licensing, economic regulations, spectrum management, new technologies like M2M and IoT, and regulatory litigation. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Ravi Gandhi, President and Chief of Public Policy and Regulations at Reliance Jio. Dr. Gandhi has rich experience in regulatory licensing, policy, and strategy of telecom sector, apart from having an experience of management of large-sized mobile and fixed-line telecom networks. So you see, there's a fairly large panel that we have. Uh, Without much ado, let me just dive into the deliberations, and may I at first call upon Chairman Pai for his opening remarks. Chairman Pai, over to you, please.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Aggarwal, for that introduction. Thank you as well to the U.S.-India Business Council for helping to organize this roundtable. My gratitude extends as well to COAI for putting together this virtual India Mobile Congress, and I certainly wish your organization continued success under the leadership of the new Director General, Mr. Kochar. It's great to be back at the India Mobile Congress. I attended this event, as some might remember, in New Delhi a couple of years ago, and back then, I spoke about how every facet of our lives is moving online. Now, certainly I can say that this pandemic is not what I had in mind 2 years ago, but regardless, I appreciate any chance to be with this august audience. As we were discussing earlier, I retain very warm memories of my many trips to India, most recently this past February, where I had a chance to visit, among other places, the TRAI, represented ably here today. And it left me with an even greater appreciation for the common values our countries share, the common priorities in the ICT sector, and the common determination we have to extend what I call digital opportunity to every one of our citizens in our countries. Now, moving this event online is not the only notable change from the last time I attended the Congress. My longtime counterpart, R.S. Sharma, is no longer the head of the TRAI. While I'm sad to see him go, I'm certainly grateful for his friendship and leadership over the years. And I'm honored to be on today's panel with his successor, Dr. P.D. Vaghela. Congratulations to Chairman Vaghela on his appointment, or I don't know whether he prefers chairman or doctor. I know that as a son of two physicians, doctor is probably the preferred title. So congratulations on an accoutrement that I never managed to achieve in my own professional life. Well, we've been asked to talk today about finding the right balance when it comes to regulating the 5G marketplace. And IMC's organizers have made no secret about their preferred approach when they titled this session, Light Touch Regulation. And fortunately, I share that approach, so you'll hear no complaints from me about the title whatsoever. And so the question arises, what does that balanced light touch approach look like in the United States? Well, over the past 4 years, the FCC has aggressively executed what we call the 5G Fast Plan to promote the development and deployment of 5G technologies. And that 5G Fast Plan has three basic parts. Number one, freeing up more spectrum for the commercial marketplace. Number two, making it easier to deploy the wireless infrastructure of the future. And number three, modernizing our regulations to promote fiber deployment, which is of course necessary for backhaul of wireless traffic. Now on spectrum, we've been the most aggressive and I would argue successful FCC in history. With 3 high-band spectrum auctions, we've already made available a huge amount of spectrum for commercial use, 5 gigahertz. That's more spectrum than was held previously by all wireless service providers in the United States combined. We've already finished repurposing low-band spectrum in the 600 megahertz band for 5G, and that spectrum is now being used to provide 5G service to parts of the country where 250 million Americans live. We've also made a lot of progress on mid-band spectrum, which is of course appealing for 5G because it matches good geographic coverage with very strong capacity. In July of 2019, for example, the FCC adopted flexible new rules for the 2.5 gigahertz band. This is the largest single contiguous band of spectrum below 3 gigahertz in the United States, and it's very well suited for 5G deployment. And we recently finished a tribal priority window for Native American tribes to get spectrum for free to serve digital communities that are on the wrong side of the digital divide in tribal lands. And once that processing is done, we will move to an auction sometime next year. We also made very bold changes to the 3.5 gigahertz band to bring it into commercial use for 5G. And thanks to those changes, this past August, the FCC finished an auction of 70 megahertz of licensed spectrum in that 3.5 gigahertz band, our first ever auction of mid-band spectrum for 5G. And we've also completed the necessary technical work so that the band's entire 150 megahertz is now available for the private sector. And there are already articles being written about very interesting use cases for companies building private LTE networks, cable companies using it to extend the reach of their fixed networks, wireless providers using it to provide wireless service. The sky's the limit, we believe, with respect to this kind of mid-band spectrum. And in August, the White House and the Department of Defense announced that the 3.45 to 3.55 gigahertz band should be made available for 5G as quickly as possible. And under my leadership, the FCC immediately followed up on that announcement in September. As an independent agency, we proposed to make this 100 megahertz of contiguous mid-band spectrum available for 5G while accommodating the limited remaining operations of some of the federal incumbents in that band. So I'm optimistic that we will be able to auction that 100 megahertz of the 3.45 gigahertz band next year. Now, the Commission's biggest auction of mid-band spectrum for 5G is actually kicking off this week. In fact, today we are beginning an auction as part of our reorganization of the 3.7 to 4.2 gigahertz band, commonly called the C-band. This spectrum is now mostly used by satellite operators, fixed satellite operators, to beam content to video and audio distributors. But with advances in technology, these companies can now provide those same services using alternative technologies or significantly less spectrum. And that is why this past February, the FCC voted to clear the lower 300 megahertz of that C-band, essentially the 280 megahertz from 3.7 to 3.98, along with the 20 megahertz guard band, and make that 280 megahertz available for 5G through a public auction. And all eligible space station operators that use this spectrum have already opted in to a quicker relocation to the upper 200 megahertz of the C-band, which means that the lower 280 megahertz will be available 2 to 4 years quicker than otherwise would have been the case. So I'm really excited the auction is starting today. I'm very excited about what the potential is for this band for 5G. So if you add up all of these efforts on mid-band spectrum that I described, 2.5, 3.5, C-band, we are on a path, as well as the 3.45 gigahertz band, we are now on a path to have a contiguous 530 megahertz wide swath from 3.45 to 3.98 gigahertz of mid-band spectrum available for 5G. That's not bad, especially considering that we started from scratch when I came into office back in 2017. Now, as I mentioned, spectrum is just one part of the FCC's 5G fast plan. Wireless infrastructure is another one, as is fiber deployment, the third. And we've made major progress on each of those last two planks of the plan. And that's part because we recognize that when it comes to 5G, infrastructure will be essential. 5G's more densified networks will, of course, require hundreds of thousands of small cells, an exponential increase in the number of antenna locations for our current networks. And we're going to need a lot more fiber to connect all of these devices that are going to be reliant on connectivity, and will be carrying that data into the core of the network. Now, this is an area where the FCC has been working very hard to find the right balance and apply a light touch. Now, due to some bureaucratic delays here in the United States, which may be replicated in India as well, we had areas in the United States where it could take up to 2 years to get approval for a small cell deployment, even though it might take only 2 hours to actually install that small cell. We'd also seen some excessive and exorbitant and inconsistent fees imposed by local governments. Some cities, for example, might charge $5,000 for the same approval that would only cost $50 elsewhere. And so at the FCC, we saw it as our role to provide a more consistent, more predictable regulatory framework. And we've done a lot to streamline our rules to make it easier to build, to maintain, and to expand America's wireless and wireline networks. And for instance, to make it easier to install wireless infrastructure like small cells, we set a reasonable deadline for cities to act on siting applications. We also set very reasonable limits on siting fees. fees that allow the cities to recover their costs, but don't involve charging an exorbitant rate. Again, here we tried to find the right balance. Similarly, with utility poles, to make it quicker and cheaper to attach new broadband infrastructure to utility poles, we adopted our so-called one-touch make-ready policy. So instead of having multiple parties make changes to the utility pole to enable a new attacher to work on that pole sequentially, as used to be the case, now a single entity can do all of that work. And this not only speeds up network build-out, it not only opens the door to new competition, but it also supports the expansion of wireless intermediate networks as well. Now, we've also modernized our rules to make it easier for carriers to transition from the fading copper networks of yesterday to the next generation fiber networks of tomorrow. And we also ended utility-style regulation of broadband infrastructure inspired by rules developed in the 1930s. And all of these reforms I've just discussed have helped spur record-breaking capital investments in infrastructure that's essential for 5G, whether it's fiber or small cells. In 2018, for example, we set a record in the United States for fiber deployment to homes and businesses, a record that was broken in 2019. And the number of small cell sites in the United States has really exploded. In 2018 and 2019, for instance, we added over 72,000 new wireless cell sites in the United States, which is 10 times more than the deployments from 2013 to 2016 combined. And on top of all of these efforts that I've just discussed with respect to spectrum and infrastructure, there's been another focus at the FCC and across the entire United States government. And that is to ensure that these networks are not just strong, but secure. For years, US government officials have expressed concern that there may be national security threats posed by certain foreign communications equipment providers. And to counter that risk, the FCC has prohibited the use of money from our Universal Service Fund from being spent by domestic telecom carriers on equipment or services that are deemed to present a national security threat to the United States, including the world's largest 5G global supplier, Huawei. Now, we've seen telecommunications operators around the globe taking similar actions to make sure that their networks are secure. I've had very positive conversations with our counterparts in India, the TRAI, the National Cybersecurity Entity, and others. And in addition, on the private sector side, I'm sure this audience is familiar with Reliance Jio's leadership on this front in India. There are many others too, Telefonica in Spain, Orange in France, Telstra in Australia, SK and KT in South Korea, NTT in Japan, and telecom operators in Singapore, as well as many others who've made the decision to use trusted vendors in their 5G deployment. Now, that's, of course, on the hardware side. One of the interesting things that's developed and that I personally and we generally want to encourage is the use of technological innovation to help solve this problem. Because I believe that the new technological innovation has a chance to address these security concerns. And in particular, open radio access networks, or open RANs, could transform 5G network architecture and costs and security. This fall, for example, the FCC held a forum on open, interoperable, and virtualized radio access network technologies. And several industry leaders, including Reliance Jio's Matthew Uman, participated in the conversation. And a consensus emerged from that forum that Open RAN technologies are already showing tremendous potential around the globe, and that the public and private sectors should continue to collaborate to help encourage the development and deployment of these technologies. That can enable a diversity of suppliers, it can reduce costs, it can put the keys to security in the hands of network operators as opposed to the full stack hardware vendors, and can essentially help accelerate the deployment of 5G technology in a way that's safe and secure. Our bottom line at the FCC is pretty simple. When it comes to 5G, we cannot afford to take a risk and simply hope for the best. When it comes to these new networks, we must see clearly the threats that they might present, the broader attack surface, so to speak, and try to counteract those threats at the front end as opposed to the back end. And the more that nations represented at this conference can work together to address those concerns and find shared principles of security, the safer that our 5G networks will be. And this actually brings me to the very last point I want to make today. It's in our mutual interest, I think, for the US and India to work together, not only on 5G security, but on all of the communications issues, indeed all of the issues, period, that might be of mutual interest. We are, of course, as the cliche goes, the world's oldest and largest democracies. But even more than that, we share some strategic interests, from promoting mutual economic prosperity to global security. And I dare say that Americans and Indians also share a broad set of core values, a desire for freedom that is, of course, born from a struggle for independence, a belief in pluralism, community and family, entrepreneurship, a strong work ethic, all those things that bind us together as families, as community, and as countries. And by working together, we can build a brighter future together. And one area for collaboration where we see that is in the ICT sector. In terms of trade and investment and job creation, the ICT sector is the largest area of bilateral engagement between our countries. And I think that's only going to accelerate in the future with 5G, artificial intelligence, quantum internet, and other emerging technologies. And so we need to lead the way in showing the world that the best way to unlock technological innovation and to expand digital opportunity is not by segmenting ourselves into by country, but by working together to harness the power of free and open markets. And that's why it's important for our countries to establish a strategic digital partnership. And I'm proud to say that over the past 4 years, the FCC has made tremendous progress in building and nurturing that very partnership. In February 2017, for example, my first full month in office, I had a chance to join with Chairman Sharma in Barcelona, where we signed a letter of intent between our agencies and our two governments. And this agreement established a cooperative framework for exchanging ideas on topics of shared interest, like faster broadband deployment and spectrum policy. And over the past several years, this agreement has not been a dead letter. In fact, we've effectively undertaken more than 20 engagements in support of that letter of intent, including 10 bilateral meetings, 6 video conferences, 5 replies to requests for information, and a host of other informal conversations. And through these exchanges, we're building a deeper understanding of each other's issues and ideally a foundation for further consensus. And so I welcome continued cooperation with the TRAI under the able leadership of Dr. Vaghela. We at the FCC look forward to collaborating with you and your team to further advance the positive implementation of the LOI. And in addition to the regulator-to-regulator relationship, the FCC also stands ready to advance shared goals by supporting wider interagency agreements between the US and Indian governments. In October, for example, we joined the US delegation to the US-India ICT Working Group. Many broader digital economy topics are under discussion in this working group, like data protection and privacy and cross-data border flows, which fall under the purview of other participating expert agencies. And I particularly appreciate that the exchange involved not just a government-to-government session, but also an industry-led session. I think in order for us regulators to facilitate an environment that allows industry-led innovation to thrive, it's critical for us to understand the perspective of industry. And so to that end, I look forward to hearing the insights from the participants in the roundtable today, some of whom I've had a chance to meet and appreciate for many, many years. And then speaking of endings, it is time for me to wrap this up. And by this, I mean, not just my remarks today, but moments ago, I acknowledged the recent departure of Chairman Sharma. And as you probably have heard, I announced last week that I would be leaving the FCC on January 20th of 2021. Serving as the FCC has been the greatest professional honor of my life. And it has given me the opportunity to travel around the country, around the world, to meet new people who are doing incredible things and to form new relationships as well as strengthening old ones. And none are more meaningful, to me at least, than my engagements with the people of India, of course, my country of ancestry. It's been a particular privilege to be the position representing the strong bond between our two countries. And I can tell you from the heart that I will be forever grateful for your friendship, for your hospitality during my visits, and for your willingness to work together to promote digital opportunities in each of our countries. And so, of course, as we might say amongst ourselves, dhanyavad, dhanyavad, dhanyavad. Thank you for everything you've done for me, for the FCC, and I look forward to being good friends in the weeks, months, and years to come, even after I leave this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Pai. What should I say? I think I need to learn a new lesson in being how to praise all of the achievements and all of the initiatives that you've been able to manage and do and execute in for all that time in the short period of time that you've been with us and talking to us and giving us a highlight of those. In fact, I'm personally also witness to the fact that how quickly you've been able to react, because I know that the moment the pandemic struck, you actually released emergency spectrum to the operators so that they could take care of some of the extra load that had come on some of these networks, especially on the consumer backbone network. So very, very true. And a lot of things that we need to obviously consider as we are looking at probably putting up the light touch on our regulation. And obviously, I would request Chairman Dr. Vaghela to elaborate on those. But the one point that you mentioned around how you actually resolve some of the challenges at the local level, at the municipalities, of one, giving them the direction or helping them understand that just charging is not the way. You can't look at it only from a commercial aspect. There is an aspect of how you deploy, how you can speed up these networks, and that will have a larger benefit to both the society and all the stakeholders. So thank you so much, Chairman Pai. This was actually fantastic to hear from you. May I just request, and really thankful for all the kind remarks, and we look forward to continued friendship and your leadership. May I request Chairman Dr. Vaghela, sir, your comments on how you see this evolving, because there will always be so much more that we need to do in the 5G environment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening and good morning, those in the USA. I should thank Ajit, Mr. Ajit Pai, because he is working here since long, and the kind of insight which he has given, and the kind of initiatives USA has taken, and in implementing 5G. I am new, and I would not venture into any kind of making any opinion statement, but let me assure you, everyone, that 5G is expected to introduce newer business models driven by innovative products and services. And as Mr. Pai told, regulation has to be light touch, and in some cases, I think we should do away with the regulations. This much I can tell. And this 5G, this lot of models will come up, and they should be aimed at harnessing the power of technology to generate value for all stakeholders in the mix. Their stabilizers depend on conducive regulatory environment. The regulator have a key role to play in the progress of 5G industry by ensuring a light touch regulatory framework. Collaboration between US and India in communications and related technology is a strategic imperative for current times. And we are natural allies. When I was working as Secretary Pharmaceuticals, I know how much we work together in the light of this breakout of Corona, and India and USA and even Europe becoming critical dependent on China for APIs. So we are natural allies, and we have to work together in the times to come. And this exclusive roundtable of select executives will discuss this opportunity and challenge in key areas, and such as 5G. We need to discuss ways the US and India can elevate our current digital engagement by building upon the current FCC TRAI letter of intent and the US-India ICT working group. Indian industry leaders will prioritize areas and ways to optimize this engagement. See, we have National Digital Communication Policy 2018. It presents a long-term vision of the government, seeks to lead India to a realm of new digital first world, and aims to facilitate the implementation of new technology such as 5G, IoT, M2M, etc. in the country. And the government is actively working for the faster execution of the goals and missions aimed to be achieved in the policy till 2022. I believe that we need to take a review of the implementation, and we need to expedite the implementation of the remaining action points. The guidelines related to IT-enabled BPO services have been fully liberalized by doing away with the registration of process and permitting work from home and work from anywhere. TRAI has already provided its recommendation on many strategies mentioned in the policy. For example, deployment of M2M, IoT, permitting VSAT operators to provide cellular backhaul connectivity, framework for cloud services, proliferation of broadband through public Wi-Fi networks, and enhancement of scope of infrastructure providers category IP1. The TRAI is also working for reforming the licensing and regulatory regime. This we have taken recently. We want to check which are the kind of approvals which are being given by not only DOT or MIB, but even Department of Space. And we need to create our ecosystem in giving permission and the kind of licensing. We'll be looking at that, so that it should catalyze, it should help in catalyzing investment and innovation and promote ease of doing business, as well as on roadmap to promote broadband connectivity and enhance broadband speed. So National Frequency Allocation Plan 2008 has already been issued by the DOT, and we have also given our recommendation for auction of the 5G spectrum, and we believe that government has already started working for going for auction of 5G. This thing, optical fiber cable is being laid for improving connectivity all over the country through BharatNet project. We need to see how this BharatNet project can be put into some sort of a commercial model, so that it can be fully utilized. COVID-19 epidemic, as all has almost it has impacted all economies of the world, and India is not an exception. But looking at its positive side, due to disruption caused by COVID-19, we should not look, but I will still say we have already experienced more digital transformation in the last few months than we have seen in the last many years. And the telecom sector has served as the backbone for digital activities and digital economy. The move made by making this policy is a great initiative, though its success completely depends on the way of implementation and execution, which I told in the beginning that this is very, very important, that we need to prepare a roadmap, and we need to prepare and list out the action point, and then prepare the roadmap and see that it is implemented even before 5G auction is initiated. So this is what I would like to say. And to achieve this connected society, 5G service require access to spectrum in varieties of bands to support multitude use cases, including the need to improve the quality of service. Global harmonization of spectrum resources and technical regulation is highly desirable to seize this future vision of high-speed mobile broadband communication. 5G bands are subdivided into three micro categories. I did not tell this. And 3GPP has identified various bands as 5G new radio bands in these three categories. Among them, 700 megahertz, 3.5 gigahertz, and 26 gigahertz are pioneer bands. The low band and the mid band have been identified in India for IMT services. 5G in sub 6 gigahertz will have better coverage than micro millimeter waves, and then it can be deployed in non-standalone mode along with existing 4G LTE network, which will be easier to maintain in the long run. Considering the global spectrum trends for 5G and India-specific issues, TRAI has already given its recommendation on 1st August 2018. We have done it, I think in 2018 for auction of spectrum various IMT bands, including 3,300, 3,600 megahertz. We need to, we have already, I think, DOT is in process of auctioning this mid-band spectrum soon. Further, the identification of spectrum in 2006, 26 gigahertz band of millimeter wave is also under consideration of DOT. And India is very, very price sensitive market. Global and local harmonization of 5G standards directly impact the cost of device, development of infrastructure, and acceptances by user. When it comes to acceptance by user, it's very, very price sensitive. That is what we all know. So India has set up 5G high-level forum, which has released its report in August 2018 titled "Making India 5G Ready," suggesting various measures in area of spectrum policy, regulatory policy, education and awareness promotion programs, and many other issues. India's government has launched a program titled "Building an End-to-End 5G Test Bed to Advance Innovation Research in 5G." This is what we have taken. TRAI, we are going to work on innovation research and preparing some sort of a recommendation for the government on this aspect. The work has already started. So this 3-year program began in 2018 with a budget authorization of 2,240 million. The program, the goal of the program is to build a proof of concept 5G prototypes that are broadly compliant with the 3GPP standards. And the DOT, Department of Telecommunication, and Telecommunication Standard Development Society, in collaboration with the IITs, have successfully getting recently low mobility large cell use case accepted in the International Mobile Telecommunication 2020 requirements. I hope this will be, this will help in, bringing bridging the rural-urban divide with 5G rollouts. Considering the global trends, 3,300 and 3,600 megahertz band has been identified by IMT and TRAI, and TRAI has recommended adoption of time division duplexing in this band. Spectrum in India is technology neutral, and any technology conforming to global standards of 3GPP can be deployed. Considering this increasing need for fiberization and small cell deployment of densification of network, it is critical that this is what has been mentioned. And I here a right of way, though work has been done. I think the issue of giving permission in time, that is one thing. Then pricing of the the right of way, and then the transparency. These are three things which are very, very important. And I think we need to work in this direction. Access to street infrastructure is another issue, where we have made recommendation, but we need to expedite the implementation. And we need to make all these approvals simpler, time bound, and non-discriminatory. Further, this facility be made available at very, very reasonable charges. So enabling this policy, that is ROW Rule 2016, National Digital Communication Policy 2018 are already in place, and efforts are being made on the practical implementation of these policies, which I am going to review this further and see how we can work with the state government and local bodies. Thank you, Mr. Pai, because learning from you, I think it's time that we also start engaging with the local bodies and the state government, because they are the people who give the permission. Sharing, second issue, sharing of the infrastructure and resources is also very important in bringing down the prices and improving affordable services. See, while on one hand it helps in speedy rollout of services and application, on the other hand it maximizes return on investments and thereby attracts more investment and create new jobs. So, see, TRAI has already recommended that infrastructure provider who is presently allowed to own and share passive infrastructure should be permitted to establish and share active infrastructure elements also. This will be very, very vital for the rollout of the 5G. The use of 5G technology in different vertical sectors carries a number of implications for supporting public policy environment. Some of these are general and some are vertical specific. And we have to look at everyone, this issue in a very, very close manner and see that, we expedite the, necessary approvals and necessary mechanism in place. In terms of cross-sectoral regulation, the conversion of 5G in vertical sectors will need changes in the existing regulatory framework. And I think, TRAI needs to play a very, very major role in this. And my, attention will be on this in the next 2-3 months. And personally, I believe that the aim of regulation is to specify measures to check against practices that can adversely affect the rights of consumers, block the new entries, and make it difficult for others to compete effectively. I think beyond that, any kind of regulation will block the development, will block investment, and block innovation. And fortunately, over the last 25 years, regulation and competition have worked well to make India the second largest telecom market in the world. The regulatory decision, we need to keep a balance between the protection of consumer interest and promotion of universal service on one hand, and the encouragement of competition and technology innovation on the other. Regulatory policy, therefore, has to shift towards innovation as its major goal, beside enabling competition. And this will require a new regulatory regime. This will require a mechanism which is, which is transparent. The processes are clearly defined. It should be time bound, and the application format should not be asking details which are not required. So, government regulations can have positive and negative effects in innovation process, and we have to be very, very careful. And I'm new to this job, but my endeavor will be to see that if we can, make this regulatory regime very, very user friendly and investment friendly. This is what I would like to say. Naturally, I'm new, so I would not promise anything further. But I believe that regulation should be the last resort. Regulation should be to encourage competition, and regulation at the best should be to protect the interest of consumers. But there should be light touch, and they should not be hindering the progress of the sector as a whole, because that can block the growth of the country, because telecommunication sector is very, very vital. It is now becoming so vital that it is going to affect each and every other sector. So I would thank everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Dr. Vaghela. Those were very, very good comments. I think the biggest benefit, or the comfort that we draw in all of this is primarily that, despite you taking over only recently, there is a fair bit of realization to say that, what are the key challenges on the ground? And like you said, that, we need to get down to the municipalities. It's not only the cost, but it's also the time of approvals, which has been a big problem that the industry has faced. And we really look forward to your support and helping unravel some of these things. So thank you so much for that. May I just switch gears a little, and Monica, may I request you? You represent Facebook. I know that India represents almost 300 million Facebook accounts. It's one of the. I'm not sure what the numbers are across the world, but probably, if not the largest, probably the second among the top three that you would have globally. And this represents a large part of the usage factor, right? All of this will be enablement for you. And how do you look at? I know that you guys are also looking at various collaborations with some of the operators, and you are a very important integral part of the ecosystem. Some comments from your side on how you see this regulation being maintained at a light touch to ensure that this is accelerated in the country.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join this panel, and it's a privilege to be on a panel with Dr. Vaghela and Chairman Pai and so many esteemed professionals in the field. I know we partner with probably all of your companies, or at least most of them. As Shobhit mentioned, before joining Facebook, I worked at the United States Federal Communications Commission for 11 years. So I have a real appreciation for the challenges that those of that policymakers and regulators face as you work to develop policies and rules to improve connectivity and grow the digital economy. And it's tough. I mean, light touch is tough. You've it's really important to be mindful of the impact of regulation. So appreciate your sensitivity to that. The importance of connectivity has never been more clear, and COVID-19 has upended the lives of people in every corner of the globe. We see that those who can access high quality internet are able to work, study, and stay connected to friends and family remotely, in stark contrast to the more than 3.5 billion people around the world who are still not connected. And addressing barriers to connectivity requires many people working together, all of us working together across the public and private sectors. And you're right, Shobhit, to say India is a critical market for us. It's such an important market, and we're very focused in the country. As a former regulator, it's a lot of fun to work at Facebook, where connectivity really is at the heart of our mission, which is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And the pandemic has really underscored the value of this mission. We have a team of experts and engineers dedicated to enabling better and broader global connectivity. Our team works closely with partners, like many of you, equipment manufacturers and others, to invest in and develop programs and new technologies that increase the availability and affordability of high quality internet access in India and around the globe. There's no single technology or program that will connect the entire world, especially when needs vary so widely across different regions and vary so widely between urban and rural communities. So instead of a one-size-fits-all solution, we're very focused on designing and testing different types of connectivity solutions that can be used independently or together to help expand and improve global connectivity. So we rely very heavily on the expertise of partners such as yourselves to help us identify projects that will address each piece of the connectivity puzzle and to test and deploy different solutions in local markets. It's also important, as we're doing here, to collaborate together as governments and private sector as well as civil society organizations, and adapt our approach along the way. So I'll give you a few examples of the ways we're working around the world with the help of our partners to help tackle the digital divide. A primary focus area is ensuring that there's an abundant supply of spectrum available globally, as spectrum obviously is critical to connectivity. So a balance of both licensed and unlicensed spectrum is important to us. We support, as Dr. Vaghela mentioned, global harmonized license allocations as well as unlicensed allocations. Licensed spectrum promotes build out of large, densely populated areas while facilitating global roaming and leads to economies of scale for chipsets and devices. Unlicensed spectrum drives innovation and investment in a range of technologies that can complement and support networks and expand broadband access at a low cost. As Ajit highlighted, and we applaud the United States Federal Communications Commission's decision under Chairman Pai's leadership to make the 6 gigahertz band license exempt. This was a critical decision to help meet this increasing demand for Wi-Fi and paving the way for Wi-Fi 6. Korea and Chile have also made the full 6 gigahertz band license exempt. And this month, the EU Commission will consider permitting very low power and the 6 gigahertz band, while many countries have initiated proceedings to consider license exempt use of the band. I'd be remiss in not mentioning that today is the United Nations recognized International Day for People with Disabilities, and how important spectrum-supported technologies are for improving accessibility and enhancing the lives of people with disabilities. And we had the opportunity to demonstrate to Chairman Pai some of those opportunities that are being enabled through Wi-Fi use. And hopefully we'll have that opportunity to demonstrate as well to Dr. Vaghela. A second focus area for us is increasing understanding of relevance and addressing affordability. Many internet users regularly drop off the internet for some period of time when they exhaust their data balance, as you all are very well aware, or they can't purchase broadband access because they just don't know what the internet can offer. We recently started testing a new product called Discover, which is designed to help bridge these gaps. So Discover is an app that can be used to browse any website using free data from participating mobile operators. It supports only low bandwidth traffic, so video and audio are not supported when using free data. All websites are treated equally, including Facebook. A third focus area is increasing access to reliable Wi-Fi connectivity. Wi-Fi has become a driver of economic activity and of an optimally functioning society, as we can all see in this pandemic. We developed Express Wi-Fi, a software platform that enables local service providers and mobile network operators to build, operate, grow, and monetize internet access over Wi-Fi in ways that are more sustainable and scalable. One example in India is Express Wi-Fi is now commercially available through hotspots across 7 Indian states, including Gujarat, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Maharashtra, and West Bengal. Another example in the region is Bali Tower in Indonesia, which uses Express Wi-Fi to strengthen and support hotspots in more than 100 commercial buildings and 3,000 microcell poles. Another area I want to highlight is developing network as a service. Approximately 1.4 billion people live in rural areas that remain unconnected due to distance and other challenges. We are collaborating with global operators to test new models that will help extend connectivity to these unsupported areas through a network as a service model, which enables mobile network operators to extend their service without investing CapEx by using instead an open shared cellular infrastructure that's owned and operated by a third party. A final area I wanted to highlight is our focus on dense urban areas, where we see challenges because of the difficulty of running fiber to every household. which is compounded by the increasing demand for more internet-enabled devices and content, which is straining network infrastructure. We designed Telegraph, which is a gigabit wireless technology that can deliver fiber-like speeds over the air in areas where trenching new fiber cables may be difficult or cost prohibitive. A recent example in the region is in Malaysia, where we partnered with YTL Communications to serve Georgetown, which is a UNESCO heritage city. So in addition to these and other areas where we're developing programs and technologies, we also partner with a number of nonprofits to provide funding to help address this digital divide. I'll just conclude by looking forward, as we all know, the role the internet plays in the modern economy, especially amidst the pandemic, underscores the need to bring connectivity to those who live without it. Obviously, the challenges that come with connecting the next 3.5 billion people are complex and will, require a continued evolution of policy, technology, and business models. We're committed to listening to and learning from our partners, working with others in industry, and working with governments across the globe, and to explore new ideas and approaches to improve connectivity around the world. And we look forward to working more closely with TRAI this year. So thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Very, very insightful. I think a couple of points that I've obviously noted, which are important, like you mentioned, that there is some innovation on how you're looking at connectivity solutions. I guess there will always be some impact or some aspect of regulation that will come in as those innovations kick in. And it'll be important to probably bring in some of these successful implementations or experiments that you've done across the world to the doorstep of TRAI, so that if there is any regulatory improvement that needs to be done or modification that needs to be done, that will be helpful. I also noted about the network as a service. I think that's increasingly becoming a large part of interest that helps the ecosystem balance the investments across the various stakeholders. And it also enables smaller level implementations where otherwise it would have been very difficult from a commercial perspective. So thank you so much for that, Monica. Maybe I can now possibly request Marc to come in here. Marc, you interact with various, you're head of government relations at Nokia, and as part of your role, I'm sure you're interacting with various regulatory bodies or governments across the world. If you can help us, considering the light touch regulation as the main theme, where do you see, amongst others of your comments, where do you see some of these regulations that have been light touch have actually enabled or accelerated the 5G deployment, and something that we can hear from some of your successful experiments there?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Fine?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for the invitation. And I'm really honored to be on the panel with Chairman Dr. Vaghela and also Chairman Pai and industry colleagues. I think most of you know that Nokia is deeply involved in delivering 5G and also advanced telecom solutions to operators and enterprises. Very active, obviously, in India and in the US and all around the world. So yeah, I mean, light touch regulation, absolutely critical for 5G. I think we've all heard that 5G will bring many new use cases and a lot of benefits to the economy and society. And especially as COVID has shown that connectivity is absolutely key. We did some analysis and we saw that surges in traffic up to 70% took place during lockdowns. And but it's also important to understand that 5G is a huge investment. And so appropriate policies and regulations are needed to ensure that those investments are facilitated. So during my short intervention, let me bring some best practices that we are seeing to help facilitate that investment. And I'd like to touch on two examples. And one is related to spectrum pricing, and the other one related to measures to facilitate infrastructure deployment. So on the first one, we know that spectrum obviously is the lifeblood of 5G, and it's also a very scarce resource. And still, reasonable spectrum pricing is important to avoid that deployment budgets are squeezed. And then obviously, geographical coverage should be incentivized to bring the benefits of 5G to as many people and businesses as possible. And just want to bring an example in Europe. Spectrum costs in Europe vary a lot by country, but there is a best practice in Austria that I would like to share. And there, so in Austria, under the terms of the spectrum auction process, in exchange for price discounts for their bids, operators committed to provide mobile broadband in more than 800 communities which were poorly supplied or not covered at all. And the result of that was that following the auction, 80% of so-called not spots, so these are spots lacking any coverage, are now set to be supplied with 5G by 27. So really a good practice there to make sure that there is this balance between pricing and coverage. A second example that I'd like to bring is related to the facilitation of infrastructure deployment and talk a bit about small cells and fiber. And I know Chairman Pai talked about that as well. For small cells, often there are regulations that stand in the way of granting easy access to sites in a timely manner and at a reasonable cost. Sometimes you don't have uniform administrative rules that can translate obviously in various required forms of authorizations, time-consuming procedures, etc., etc. And so there is really a need there for consistency, simplification, harmonization, replicability, and obviously also avoiding unreasonable fees. We also have an example here in Europe, which is called the EU Code, which is actually giving an exemption of permits for deployment of small cells if those small cells meet specific characteristics in terms of size, weight, or emission power. So really a good regulation to facilitate the deployment of small cells. And then there is obviously fiber, and we know that 5G networks will require massive amounts of fiber to connect the network elements, such as the small cells. And so obviously also there, regulators need to reduce the cost of laying these fiber networks. And we know that a huge part of the costs for deploying sits in civil engineering, so actually digging up the roads and the streets to put the fiber in. And so here, also giving some examples that what we are seeing in Europe is the regulation which is called, it's actually a directive, the Broadband Cost Reduction Directive, which is incentivizing really cooperation between telecom and other utility sectors like energy, water, and transport to reduce the cost of civil engineering. So making sure that when a specific utility is digging up the street, actually the others know about that, so that, for instance, fiber could be put at the same time in the ground, avoiding digging several times. So these are just a couple of examples on what I think are best practices that are happening around the world to make sure that 5G can be rolled out in an effective and fast way. This obviously requires us to work all together, and I think a panel such as this, where we can exchange those ideas and best practices, is absolutely the right thing to do. So that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marc. Some good examples, and if I look back at those examples, I don't think that it's very complicated. They are rather simple, but it requires, like we said, can you think of it from a more solution-based approach? Going back to one example that you gave around the obligations that, you compensate the high cost of spectrum versus the obligations that you put on them. I know that in some of the licenses that were given right first time, there was a lot of obligation that was put on the operators in lieu of some of these costs being brought down. But I think that did not work out very well because possibly there was far more gaps in infrastructure at that point of time. And the incentivizing of the cross sector, elements, which is that can power sector, telecom sector, and the municipalities actually work together to make sure that you will be able to actually create far more resilient, dense networks, which will be required in 5G as compared to what we have right now with 4G and below. So thank you so much, Marc. I'll request Rahul to possibly come in here. Rahul, you spread your wings in India as Airtel. You also look at the operations, or Airtel has multiple operations across Africa. What do you think are the key points that we need to consider as we go through this implementation of 5G or prepare for that implementation?
Thank you, first of all, IMC, for this invite. This is a very good panel to discuss these issues as we are seeing. Also, Shobhit, for putting the context correctly. Whenever I listen to Dr. Pai, I always feel there is so much more to do and do in this telecom world. And for whatever I've seen, Dr. Vaghela, in the few interactions we have had, a very pragmatic approach towards resolving the sector issues, which is such a welcome thing for us. Coming to our main topic of discussion, and I would like to contextualize this more in the Indian context now, as we see it ahead. So as we know, there are three aspects of the 5G as we see it. One aspect relates, of course, to the regulator, which has to set the policy framework. The other aspect is the technology choices, which, based on what regulator decides, is what operator will have to choose in terms of technology choices, which I think Mr. Chairman Pai also referred to. And third aspect will be the consumer itself, who will make choices on the type of use cases we are able to generate. So these are three important pillars of this journey, which we are going to look at. Coming back to the point of the regulation, so we see that now the technology is on the horizon, and increasingly now, we are going towards a very highly mobile and a very, very connected society. The proliferation of the connected objects and devices will pave, way for different business models, which Chairman Vaghela also mentioned about. We are going to see innovation in energy, in e-health, smart cities, connected cars, and industrial manufacturing. Our own policy, the National Digital Communication Policy in 2018, actually visualized these changes, and that's why it talks about $100 billion of investments over next few years. Also mentions about connecting 5 billion devices. Also mentions about the broadband connectivity at 50 Mbps for every citizen. How do we reach there? How do we utilize the benefits which you are going to accrue under 5G? So I'm going to lay down few things as we see it from an operator perspective of how 5G should be branching out. First and foremost, of course, is the spectrum, and the speed and the reach and the quality of 5G spectrum will be heavily dependent on the access to the right amount and the type of spectrum and what price we are getting the spectrum at. So it has been mentioned already that there are different capacity waves bands. There is a millimeter wave band at 2628, which presently in our country we don't have much clarity on. There is the capacity band of 3.5, which currently we are only at around 175, but we are hopeful that the COS committee will look into this and we are going to see increased supply coming in. And of course, then you have got the capacity coming up in the lower bands of 400 to 800, let us say, which we are looking for something to happen in the pricing in terms of 700. So what is the typically we were trying to understand in the world, how this spectrum is getting distributed. So in the capacity band, generally operators are getting between 400 to 800 per operator. In mid band, around 100 megahertz, and in the lower band, around 20 to 40 megahertz. This is just a worldwide average. So this is what we have to look at. So the first challenge, of course, for us is to get that much amount of spectrum. Chairman Pai mentioned about the huge amount of strides they have taken in US on freeing up such a large amount of spectrum, and we hope that we are going to be in a position to be able to also do similar things. As far as the pricing is concerned, that I think is one big challenge area for us. And currently the pricing in India is around 50,000 crores for 5G spectrum, is a lot of money for operators currently in the situation we are in. So we hope that that is going to be something which is going to be addressed going ahead. Now 5G requires massive backhaul capabilities. Each speaker has already mentioned that. It requires fiber densification. It requires right of approvals. And we do have a right of way policy in place of 2016. But currently only around 19 states in the country have adopted it, that too not fully the way it was visualized. So there is a lot of work which requires to be done on setting up the right of way in the correct fashion. And we hope there's a lot of efforts being made both by the regulator and by the licensor, and we hope that there is going to be some progress coming ahead. The other part of backhaul, of course, is the E and V band and microwave spectrum. Now, nearly 70% of microwave in the country is unutilized. So I think it's time that for an immediate rollout, we see some sort of clarity from the licensor. Regulator has already recommended a policy on E and V band, and we are waiting for the DOT to give clarity on how do we move ahead on that. Now, simply speaking, if you've got spectrum, if you've got backhaul, what else do you require? So we require BTSs, we require a lot of small cells. More importantly, we require a street side furniture. And for that, you require a lot of approvals coming from municipalities, from local bodies. And that is a big area, which, we'll have to have paradigm shift in the way the local municipalities see telecom and the utility of telecom in being able to enhance the life, and the cycle of the consumers. So I think that is going to be another big area. Also, we forget sometimes very small parts. Generally, 5G network is entailing nearly double the amount of power consumption, right? Which will require for all our cell sites, we will have to have separate approvals from the governments for being able to immediately trying to prep up our power usage and to be able to give us approvals in time and at industrial rates, because right now we are being charged very, very commercial rates and it becomes very difficult for us. Of course, 5G will also entail a very different view of how we look at net neutrality. And of course, Chairman Pai has already shown us what all can be done in that. So in India, I think some flexibility would have to be provided to the operators in terms of traffic management practices to be able to address features like network slicing, etc. So I think that is going to be one area where we think that the regulator is going to look at. Of course, the 5G ecosystem has got a very one important aspect on security, and the alignment which needs to be on security is known to the world. And so the security aspect covering the network, the users, the devices, we'll have to designate some globally acceptable standards for security to be able to move ahead on that. Privacy and data protection is one other area. The parliamentary committee is already seized on that matter, and we hope we are going to see some sort of a direction coming from there on those related aspects. So these are the areas, Shobhit, honestly, we would feel as operator, which are areas where we would require some sort of light touch regulation and a way ahead to move forward. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Rahul. A lot of things being punched in a short period of time. I think if I was to pick up...
Can I intervene? Can I intervene? I think Vatts has really, outlined the action which, will be required on my part. And I'm really very happy. I'm really very happy.
Thank you, Dr. Vaghela. So nice of you. Rahul, if I was to just pick on two or three, I think regulation, we are famous for our regulation. And like you mentioned that more importantly, can we look at it at the grassroots level as to how municipalities, everyone comes together to really make this happen? And in that part, one of the, in an earlier discussion, a very apt point was brought out that there's some level of education that we need to do with our municipalities and our local bodies to make sure that they don't look at it as a disruption in their operation. They look at it as something that will enable them in the long term, and they will bear the benefits of that. Power, very true. I can't think of, I remember when Jack Welch came down way back in 2001, 2002, and he was addressing the entire industry bodies as well as the government. He says, you want to digitize, but the first thing you need for digitization is power. So while we have moved the needle in trying to move from a power deficit country to at least a neutral country, but the challenge will be how do you get these micro power connections at every micro cell site that you really need, at every nook and corner. So it's not only the cost, it's also the time to action that is important. And then about the network slicing, I think that when you start looking at different products and services, there is a regulatory element which is very important. I'll leave it to Dr. Vaghela and the team to obviously see how we can facilitate that. And the last but not the least, the security of all this. As 5G becomes an enabling factor across industries, securitization of these communications and networks is going to be very, very key from a national perspective, from an enterprise perspective, from a consumer perspective. So thanks, Rahul. I think very, very relevant points, and you brought them out. Let me move on to Rob. Rob, thanks for your patience. You represent Sinclair. You are the second largest broadcaster in the US. A little different to what we've been typically talking from the MNO's perspective, the regulator's perspective. How do you see 5G from a broadcasting lens? And secondly, how do you really attribute or correlate that to the Indian environment? If I can ask your comments on that, please.
Yes, thank you. First, congratulations to Dr. Vaghela and to Chairman Pai. I want to wish Chairman Pai good luck in your next career as you exit on January 20th. Chairman Pai has been a big supporter of what we now term next generation television, or previously known as ATSC 3.0. We like to call things by names. Eventually we get it right. But we're really excited about the opportunity to lay this hybrid IP technology onto the broadcast spectrum. We think it unlocks a lot of opportunities. What Monica addressed as community, as a local broadcast to the community, is everything to us. And whether it's good times or during this pandemic, we saw large tuning to our television stations for information. You know, when people are seeing various views, we know we're fact checking. But as it comes to India or anywhere globally, it's all about mobility. Mobility and the mobile device builds community. And with this spectrum and this technology, it allows for multiple languages to be distributed off the spectrum, and which is greatly important. So you could have 5 or 6 different languages across the same broadcast that's coming out, which builds that community. It gives that mobility. In our investment with Sinclair Labs, we're focused on 5G technologies and the potential of the O-RAN, which is being brought into next generation television as well. So it's able to take advantage of what's out there. Also, the UHF is a prime spectrum with balance in large covered areas and the ability to reach indoors, which is key as well. And we want to leverage the UHF spectrum managed by the public broadcasters to provide mobile services most demanded by the consumers at significant speed. So here in the States, it's 10x faster than the 4G capabilities. So it opens up speed, it opens up mobility. We've done tests at consumer electronics shows and at NAB where we've taken this technology and been out on the road, and there is no buffering, no disruption of the signal as it comes off the hybrid transmitter. So we're really excited about all these opportunities. You're able to also have overlays come over on top of the video in various languages as well. And then for us here in the States, it opens up numerous commercial opportunities. But in India, it's really about different languages coming off of a single signal and the mobility of bringing that to the mobile device and being that outreach to the community. So that's really what we're really excited about. It's you're able to also get one-to-one or one-to-many content. It's personalized content, and it's all available right there coming off the public broadcast spectrum.
Thanks, Rob. I'll pick on your point on the localization of language. I can't even call it rainbow of languages. We have just so many, and that's been one of the differentiating factors. When we look at any of the value-added services, the journey that some of the operators or most of the operators took in terms of revenue enhancement, where the moment you were able to localize your language, the proliferation levels went through the roof, and that's very important, especially in a country like India. And that's a good point that we need to, because overlay and personalized content is going to be the key of driving some of these factors going forward. Because in 5G, yes, you have the speed, but you really need more and more content to be able to successfully deploy and see that really coming through. So thanks so much, Rob. That was very nice.
Thank you.
So, if Rajesh, if I may request you to come in, you represent part of an I wouldn't say, not an OEM only, but partly OEM and partly provision of services and implementation around. How do you see, because there are lots of challenges, especially on the infrastructure front, which we need to clear out to make sure that this implementation is really accelerated rather than limited right from the start. What are your comments on all of this, hearing the speakers and what the topic has?
Sure, sure. Yeah, thank you, Shobhit, and it's great to be on this panel. Being back of the line, actually, most of the topics are already covered and all the good stuff is already spoken about. But I must congratulate Chairman Pai for a very prolific 4 years. I spent roughly 25 years in the US at various telecom operators, and I would have salivated if I had this much spectrum to do stuff. So, but nevertheless, I think the challenge remains here in India. There's a lot of work to do. And I think I'll just curtail on what Rahul mentioned earlier. There are things that, at the policy front, you can set a lot of, a template for how things need to be executed. But then if it doesn't flow down to the local and the municipal level, and there is no mandate or perhaps a check or balance, then it sort of fizzles out. I mean, we had the Smart City Initiative. There was a huge push towards getting smart cities deployed. And STL was part of the initial, deployments. We did up to 3 smart cities, but then somehow that, it has sort of, I wouldn't say fizzled out, but the seriousness of deploying and bringing that into various towns and tier 2 cities has sort of, not panned out very well. Now, and it also goes back to, as you mentioned, Shobhit, the education of the people at all levels in the government to say that, this is really a national imperative to bring broadband connectivity to every individual. It is on par with power and water. It can't be anything other than that. With this sort of pandemic that has hit us, it's become even more critical that regardless of the economic strata that individuals are, everybody needs to have bandwidth, everybody needs to have connectivity, whether it's wired or wireless. So at STL, we are really, we have partnered with the government on BharatNet. We've brought, fiber to the Gram Panchayats. We've participated in all of the phases. We're bringing, connectivity to the villages as well. And, you mentioned multilingual solutions. We've actually developed a platform that can now be deployed at, rural communities, digital platform that can run either on fiber or Wi-Fi. And you can actually now have people access, health or just internet or YouTube. And it's amazing to see how people have started to leverage, even people who have no prior access to internet or even digital platforms, are able to figure it out by themselves with very little or no nudging. So, across our capabilities, we've also helped the networks on the defense side. We've done a lot of upgrades on the defense for across the Navy, Army, and Air Force, providing data centers and fiber. In fact, we've deployed 10,000 kilometers of really rough terrain of fiber in Jammu and Kashmir. And, I think all of this happens with a partnership with the government. And more recently, with our investments in virtualized solutions, we're now looking at bringing ORAN-centric, Open RAN-centric, and Chairman Pai alluded to this, really disrupting the marketplace and bringing it through a design, IP creation, and manufacturing in India. That is sort of our mantra, and it sort of aligns with the Prime Minister's call to action for with Atmanirbhar. And we truly believe that technology and solutions that are developed for a global market out of India can certainly not only provide for India, but also for the global market, and plus contribute incredibly to the GDP growth in India. Just back on the spectrum, I think, again, there are different ways to maybe operate spectrum, either lightly or fully licensed or unlicensed. The regime can be sort of determined based on the use cases and applications. And no
not every megahertz is the same. I mean, you have coverage in capacity-centric megahertz, and you have to really think about how to enable the operators, how to enable the ISPs, the CSPs to leverage spectrum, just like how the example has been set in the US, to bring new services, applications, and capabilities to the market, and that will drive the economic activity that eventually will, pay for the spectrum. So it's just that you don't pay upfront, but then you get the government and the country benefits from utilization of the spectrum, and that use case has been more than sort of validated by the unlicensed spectrum that has been used so well for Wi-Fi. It's $1 trillion economy just there. So I think the way that and maybe this is something that Dr. Vaghela might be maybe looking at as well is how do we bring spectrum at the right price and at the right level, at the scale, so that it generates the economic activity that can then benefit the country as a whole. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. I acknowledge what you said, that obviously, the challenge of a large, such an educated, I don't think so I can get more concentration of brain power on these subjects than what I already have. And that's the challenge as a moderator. How do I constantly reinvent what I have to say so that I can get some meaningful thought process going? But no, thank you so much. And I think it's important to balance both aspects. I don't think so any one solution. Somewhere I remember it was being mentioned, fiber will not be the only solution. Somewhere we cannot deploy fiber in everything. Somewhere it will have to be a wireless solution, and it will have to be buffeted or in large part supported by the wireline solution, so that we can get 5G off the ground in a manner which is really reflective of its true potential. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for that. Balaji, if I can bring you on, and thank you for your patience. You've been a veteran of the industry, across forums. I've seen you be there. You've probably witnessed so many changes, and as this now is on the threshold of probably the biggest change that we've seen in the last 3 decades of since we have deregulated telecom as a service. What would be your thoughts as to key things that would be imperative to keep the regulation light as we embark on this journey?
Thank you so much, Shobhit. At the outset, I must acknowledge the fantastic work that obviously Chairman Pai has done. Fortunate to have interacted with many times, and his openness to ideas and, more importantly, executing them is really, really outstanding. And the way he did the outreach with TRAI to get the best of both countries in terms of collaborative dialogue on policy is exemplary. And I think you leave that platform on a very, very strong footing, Mr. Pai, and I'm definitely looking forward to staying in touch. And also to acknowledge Dr. Vaghela. I mean, he is very, very humble and modest. We know his background in terms of being a fantastic and astute administrator. And I've also seen in the little time that he's actually come into this role, his take rate, if I may use that word, is incredibly high. I mean, every forum he comes up with, having picked up everything that's possibly got to be picked up in very quick time, and actually, move the agenda forward by putting his views in a soft but very firm manner. So I think we are really delighted, Dr. Vaghela, that we have you to helm TRAI in these very exciting times, I must say. Yeah, Shobhit, you're right. We celebrated 25 years in this sector just earlier this year for India. And I've been here 27 years, 2 years maybe preparation for that first call to take place and so on. But I must say I'm deeply excited because the pace at which our nation has moved on this journey of digital communication has been fantastic. Everything that we've done has been to population scale. So if we have 1.1 billion people connected on mobile devices, that's like fantastic. If you have the largest data consumption in the world, it's incredible. If you have UIDI, which is doing the kind of magic that it does as an identity platform, it's incredible. If you look at UPI, 2 billion transactions a month. I mean, that's like, again, incredible. So all of this has happened at a time when you have a pandemic, right? So think about it, that I'm humbled more than anything else of being part of an industry that actually has changed the lives of individuals, organizations, societies, and people. And the fact that we as an industry, despite everything that was thrown at us, have managed to kind of do it has been because of two reasons. A, phenomenally supportive government and phenomenally supportive regulator, and a can-do attitude of our people. Our network warriors have absolutely risen to take care of traffic increases that were in 1 week what we saw the previous year, and to also kind of deal with changes from home, rather work moving to home, and therefore the whole traffic chain that happened. Struggling with a lot of issues, not having curfew passes, putting their lives at risk in order to make sure that this nation kept chugging and the digital engine kept moving in order to keep the nation thriving. So I think it just gives a lot of confidence to us that if we can manage this, there's nothing that we cannot do going forward. So I think, and the key word in this whole thing is innovation and collaboration. Those are two things that have truly helped us to kind of tide over this very critical phase. I must say that the government always comes up with great visions. The regulator absolutely picks the signal and starts to move ahead with policy recommendations that are again fantastic. So when they talk about 5 trillion economy for India or $1 trillion digital economy, you already see the TRAI coming up with regulation that can actually facilitate that. We saw the same thing happen in the context of NDCP. Literally, a lot of the recommendations of the TRAI were debated and deliberated in a very large open forum. A lot of inputs were taken, and the government literally picked up a lot of those recommendations that came. And that shows that there is a collaborative effort and there is a consultation process that is quite robust. And so they came up with those 3 pillars of connect, propel, and secure. I think a lot has been said already, so I don't want to repeat. But like I mentioned, connectivity, the fact that we've done what we've done, even in these difficult times, shows that part is in good shape. If you look at secure, the fact that we have huge data sets and are still managing with those mashups to do it in a very systematic way, where we take customer consent very seriously, where we take our responsibility as of holding somebody else's data very seriously, is something that again is saying that we are on a very sound foundation. The fact that we are nimble and innovative can also be driven by a couple of factors. The largest data consumption with possibly the least amount of spectrum, the amount of sweating that we do on the asset of whether it's spectrum, whether it is towers, it is incredible. Some of the largest deployment of massive MIMO, some of the largest deployment of virtualization and technology has been done by us as an industry and as Vodafone Idea, or we as we call it now. And so all of these things point out that we are there to play our role in order to make sure that the government's vision, the Prime Minister's vision of a $1 trillion digital economy is met. I guess if you look at the structure of the industry from the operator's point of view, that's also whatever path we took to get there has quickly come to a point where it addresses the question that Dr. Vaghela said. Is there adequate competition? I think there is. Are there 4 players who have some scale? The answer is yes. And clearly, the recipe that Chairman Pai talked about of making sure there's adequate spectrum for everybody as you now embark on this new journey of 5G is available is actually an opportunity, because now we have fewer number of operators that can therefore not take fragmentation as a given, but actually have a lot more of spectrum available to roll out citizen services at population scale, whether it's in urban India, whether it's in rural India, whether it's for consumers or for industry, with all kinds of vertical solutions and industrial opportunities that obviously presents. So I think adequate competition, innovative, nimble operators, wonderful business models. The reason we are able to still manage to give low prices is because everything that we possibly could share, we have shared. Towers, fiber, all assets, spectrum trading, spectrum sharing, all kinds of options are available. So if that is not, should I say, nimble policy and nimble execution, I think you wouldn't find a better example than this. I guess there are a few issues which have been so rightly identified by previous speakers. Wouldn't touch upon all of them, but at least highlight 2 or 3 things that I think will make the agenda move forward better. I think the 5G trial spectrum, 5G test beds, we're very fortunate that we had a forward-looking 5G high-level consultation which was undertaken by DOT with the support of TRAI, education institutions, academicians, industry got together. And I think we are close, as I understand, on the 5G test beds to be made operational. We as operators are ready. We believe that the startup ecosystem is ready in order to make sure we have India-specific solutions that will add huge value to the nation as a whole. And then, of course, as operators, as startups, as OTT players, everybody will have a little share of the pie to make that 5G use cases a reality in an Indian context, if I may say so. The second is, of course, the spectrum, and I won't dwell upon it. The adequacy and the right pricing of that is supremely important. One agenda that Dr. Vaghela talked about and Chairman Pai talked about collaboration. State, center, local administration, that is still work in progress. There's no reason why we won't get there. I guess the need wasn't as intense. There were other pressing problems. Now this is the most pressing problem, because if we are 35% fiber to towers, we need to very quickly get to 80% plus fiber to tower, because that's an easy win. With partners like STL and others who have taken to rural India, I'm just submitting that it should not be a problem if we just focus our attention and saying not just to Gram Panchayat is now covered, can we make sure that every tower, every pole which is deployed, which is going to go the 5G way, is fiber connected. I believe it is possible with the vision that we have in the government and the regulator, and with their support and their background. I'm sure we'll be able to get this going quickly. But I think that is one area that we ought to probably work together and collaborate on. And if we can use technology tools in order to visualize how that roadmap would be of the fiber, and make sure that those routes are prioritized, and you don't end up accidentally cutting fiber, which is the lifeline of the nation, then I think that would be a fantastic thing that we do to ourselves and for the nation. And one last point is about fixing the industry health. Connect India, Secure India, all in place. Propel India requires $100 billion of investment. The pendulum has swung the other way. We as industry are humble enough to accept that there is a need to pull the pendulum back a little bit to make the industry more robust, for more resources to come in, and for some pricing power to come back to the industry. Because when you provide 100 times data, 3 times voice than what you gave 5 years ago, and if you are at 30% lower as an industry on the overall revenue stream, the pendulum has indeed swung the other direction. But we are very confident that with astute regulator and the DOT and the mature industry that we have, we hope that that part of it will also swing the right direction, and therefore provide the right impetus to have a robust industry that can play its right role in order to accomplish the $1 trillion economy of digital, which is foreseen by the government and the Prime Minister in quick time. We'll get there. The point is how fast, right? And the more robust the industry is, the better chances we have of achieving it in double quick time, which is what the government, the regulator, and the Prime Minister want us to, step up to. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Shobhit.
Thank you, Balaji. Some very poignant, very nice thoughts in terms of being balanced. I think one thing that I'll really call out your comments is the fact that there's definitely the need to say 3 cheers for the way the industry has really stepped up to the challenge. I know that for a fact, almost every operator came out. There were lots of brave hearts who said, COVID or no COVID, irrespective, we have to keep the engine chugging along. And the nation actually, in fact, I'll let you know, I know we are short on time and I'll request Ravi's intervention immediately, but I was talking to someone outside the country, another operator, and he said that after COVID, the government has actually understood what and how telecom really is. It was being taken for granted in some spheres, but today the government, power and telecom are the 2 main things that is keeping the engine running and the nation running. So thank you so much for that, for really taking us back to something that we need to acknowledge. Much appreciate that. Ravi, if I may call upon you now, thank you for being patient. It's never easy to be last before, but I know you mentioned about the 4 quadrants. which is very, very important, of how you see the entire ecosystem being divided and what are the key imperatives for each of those quadrants. Let me have your comments on that, because that's a very good way of slicing the entire problem.
Thank you, Shobhit. At the outset, I welcome Dr. Vaghela, the exciting word of digital communication. So while we talk about light touch regulation, it is actually enabling regulation. And TRAI in last 20-25 years had been the most progressive regulator in the country. And that is visible from the kind of telecom growth which the country had. While we welcome you, sir, at the same time, we are also going to miss Ajit. I think Ajit will really miss you, and I would personally like to be in touch with you. And I hope that we'll keep on seeing you in India and other places in the events at least. So being last on the panel, the most difficult part is that you have to serve the same wine in a different bottle. So let me try collecting a bottle. So what I see this whole 5G thing is into the 4 quadrant. The first quadrant, of course, which all of us mentioned about, is the spectrum. Second is about infrastructure. The third would be around network and devices. And the fourth would be the users. So when we talk about 5G rollout, we have to address all 4. And the first 2 quadrants, I think, requires maximum attention from the regulator, and the other 2 quadrants requires attention from the operators. Let me go one by one. When we talk about spectrum, I would really like to compliment Ajit, the kind of initiatives which US has taken, the auction of 28 gigahertz, the auction of 600, then getting 3.7 to 4. I think it's really commendable. And why it is commendable is that we have seen the journey from 2G to now 5G. And in the 2G days, we used to have kilohertz and kbps. Then we moved to megahertz and mbps. Now we are in gbps. So we require spectrum also in gigahertz. So the scale is actually logarithmic scale. It is not a linear scale. While economy is moving in a linear scale, GDP is moving on a linear scale, GNP is moving on a linear scale, income is moving on a linear scale, but the capacity required for telecom is moving on a logarithmic scale. It's every decade it is multiplying by 1,000. So we need to create the network of those kinds. At Jio, what I can say that what we have done is we carry 5.5 exabyte of data. Every user in India, Rob mentioned about, we talk about mobile. Every user in India consumes 12 GB per month. So this is, I think, unheard of in any other part of the world, because that's the only connectivity which people have. And more than 70% of that data is consumed in video. So mostly OTT video, YouTube and other video content. So a large population of the country uses 4G for media and entertainment. So when I go to the 4th quadrant, probably I'll mention about the kind of use cases which will be different from video in case of 5G. So when we talk about spectrum, I think we need spectrum in gigahertz. Of course, different band will have different capacity. You can't have in every band. Till now, telecom sector has only seen sub 2 gigahertz, whether it is 700, 800, 900 band or 1800 band or at max 2300 megahertz band. This is how we have reached to 5.5 exabyte every day when we have used spectrum only and only up to 2.3 gigahertz. And we have not seen the potential of millimeter wave. We have not seen the potential of say 60 gigahertz or 80 gigahertz. So I think probably we need to go there and see the changed world. So every megahertz or every gigahertz which is allocated has to be allocated in such a way that it brings maximum public good. So maximum people are served with that, because spectrum is nothing but it's a national resource for the people. So while making any policy around allocation of spectrum for any kind of use, I think that's the only check which regulator or the government has to see, that it has to bring maximum good for the maximum people. And that's what I see that US has done that, and we hope that India will also move in that direction. For 5G, we believe that at least 1 gigahertz spectrum in the millimeter band and at least 100 megahertz in the mid band would be required for 5G, and less spectrum probably will not be helpful. We talked about sweating the assets. I think India is one country who has produced maximum bytes per hertz. With least spectrum in the world, we have produced maximum output in that. But I think this is the time now when we need to actually relax that and improve the quality, give better spectrum, more spectrum to the users. When I talk about, sir, about the higher band, moving towards millimeter band and the higher spectrum band, it creates a second problem with the infrastructure. So when we move from first quadrant of spectrum to the second quadrant of infrastructure, this really high band creates the second problem, which is infrastructure. We need to densify the sites. The sites would be smaller. Number of sites would be multiple of what we have seen till today with the 4G networks. And this multiple will be more than 10 times or more than 20 times. For that, the biggest problem would be getting permissions, because these are not the big tower of 40 meter or 50 meter or 60 meter. These would be street poles, street infrastructure, hoardings, smaller buildings, utility toilets, utility buildings of the government. Everywhere we need to put the antenna to reach to the people. And when you are putting the antenna, you need to backhaul also. So for that, the fiber is required. Fiber is critical. So the fiber and the small cell goes together hand in hand, and both are linked with, I think, enabling regulation. While we have right-of-way rules, but I think more than that, as Mr. Pai also talked about exorbitant rates of right-of-way. So that's very, very important. It's not important in India. It is important in other countries. Every country is solving this. I think India need to solve it faster than others. The third quadrant is about technology, and technology is linked with security. Technology is linked with providing quality of service. Technology is linked with providing the intended benefit of the network or the service which we are going to launch. In 5G, one thing is we are trying to reduce the latency. We are trying to reach to the latency of one millisecond, less than 1 millisecond. So you need to be very, very close to the user. So the data centers need to be taken to the users. Users cannot go to data center now. So how do we actually get lot of data centers who are closer to the users? TRAI, I would compliment TRAI for coming out with a consultation paper on data centers. Then second is the technology. It is not only the technology, but the CPU, customer devices. How do we get devices who are manufactured in India, which are cheaper, and also of course the network gear, because the security is very important when we reach to when we have such a big network closer to the users on open standards, open RAN, cloud RAN, and all those things. So all these flexibilities also bring in security problems. So that for security, we have to have trusted vendors, trusted manufacturers. I think Mr. Pai also mentioned about security being the most important aspect of the 5G, and we believe that at Jio we have created end-to-end for 5G stack, which includes hardware and software. We hold all the IPRs and patent of that, and probably you will see we going with our own 5G technology, not being dependent upon anyone else. The fourth quadrant, not the least, would be the users, whether it is in the medical sector or education sector, agriculture sector, smart wearable, autonomous vehicle, or of course, media and entertainment. I think all these sectors are preparing themselves. While we are in a process of creating the network, there are a lot of startups and other technology companies who are already working in this direction. And by the time the networks are there, we'll see a large number of users coming on the network in terms of artificial intelligence, VR, AR, and many other things. So we don't have to really bother about the use cases, because use cases would come the moment the network comes. But I think the challenge with us is to create a very robust network in the country, which is carrier grade, reaches to everyone, ubiquitous, and have sufficient capacity. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ravi. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm conscious of the time. I know we've gone over in terms of our panel time. May I request, if we were to pick, each of you, if you were to pick one aspect, and quickly, possibly in half a minute or maximum a minute per each one of you, which one would it be? And I'll start with Chairman Pai. I know you've said a lot. There's a lot of reverberation of what you've said and Dr. Vaghela have said across all the speakers. But if there was one thing that you would see India really set from a lighter touch, what would it be from your point of view?
Well, thanks for the question. I think what I draw from all of the conversations, the insightful comments from all the panelists, is that the essential job of government is to provide the building blocks for investment and innovation and regulatory certainty. And if government does that in a way that protects competition and protects consumers, then ultimately everybody benefits the entire ecosystem. And that's something that we've tried to do at the FCC. I know the TRAI is doing as well in India. And hopefully we can continue to do that to maximize the benefit of these new technological developments for all of the peoples of our countries.
Thank you so much. That's a message in a bottle, if I can say. Thank you for that. And we wish you all the best as you prepare to take on the newer challenges. And thank you so much for lighting the way of all the changes that you've brought on. And definitely there are a lot of hallmarks that have been put there. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Dr. Vaghela, may I request your comments as a concluding remark? I know you've been like a complete absorption of all this. You even intervened saying that, Rahul has said what we need to do. So thank you so much for being so receptive as a regulator. But any closing remarks that you would like to say?
Yeah, actually, I'll be missing Ajit Pai. That is one sentence I would like to say. Because, they have been way ahead when it comes to, light touch regulations and ushering in 5G. And it would have been great to work with him, but then, I can work otherwise also with him. I will get his numbers and I will keep in contact with him. Of course, we need to do a lot. And two things which I can see immediately is, right of way, policy with regard to IPS, right, and street furniture. This is the very, very important thing. I think we need to work very, very fast on that. Naturally, other thing, this 5G trial, I think spectrum is also very important. These are the things. I have written down, I have prepared a list of now, 12 points which I need to work. Actually, we work on this 12 point for 5G. Actually, we will be transforming the sector also. We need not, if we work on these 12 points, the sector will be transformed, and let us see what I will be able to do. But sure, we'll work on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always a very, very delicate balance that you have to strike between what the consumer wants, what the ecosystem wants, and what the government also wants. So thank you for your leadership, and all the best to you as you embark on the various challenges and how you set them right. Monica, may I just quickly request you 1 point from your side as a concluding remark on what you would pick on all of the discussions as the most important from your side?
Sure, it's hard to top the messages in a bottle from Chairman Pai and Chairman Dr. Vaghela, but I would say it's really important to pay attention to network coverage in addition to capacity. The focus on incentivizing expansion and thinking about how regulations can incentivize expansion of coverage to underserved and unserved areas is really important. Making build-out requirements effective and incentivizing that is important. Sharing of passive infrastructure and other policies that lower the cost of infrastructure and rights of way access is important. So I appreciate the focus on those issues as well. And thank you again for having me participate.
Thanks, Monica. Much appreciate that. Ravi, could I just request your one key thing? You put the 4 quadrants. I don't know which one you'll choose, but what would be your choice as one point that we should take away from your point of view?
I think in presence of Dr. Vaghela, I would choose quadrant 1 because that's the most important quadrant for this sector. The spectrum is going to be the key aspect for 5G, and we need more and more. I think the spectrum should be available in abundance and on tap. So whenever operator requires, they should be able to take the spectrum and use it in the network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I hope Mr. Pai and Rob will be able to understand, and so with Monica, dil mange more. I guess that's the message that you want to probably put out to him, which means the heart obviously wants more and more. Balaji, please, if you can elaborate on your one key thing that you would want to put out for the panel.
No, it's a treasure trove of ideas that have emanated out of this panel. Maybe I'll just pick up one thing of collaboration for ruthless focus on execution. That's it. We have everything that we need. We just need to have that one vision that unites us all, that we are on a journey which is going to transform, as Dr. Vaghela said, the nation and therefore the sector. And then therefore, if we have a ruthless focus on execution, I don't see why we'll fail. We will absolutely succeed.
Thank you so much, Bharti. I think so that small word execution is really key. We have, like you said, you have all the ingredients to really make the cake. Let's bake it and really spread the cheer. Thank you so much for that. Rajesh, can I request you to please put in the concluding remark of what you feel and how what would be the key point?
Sure. I think the emphasis on private-public partnership at all levels, at the central as well as state, local, and municipal. I think that's extremely critical. Bringing those folks on board with the idea of enabling connectivity for their, the masses at large. That's only going to be enabled through as education or rather than a diktat. So I think that's a critical element. And maybe one other thing would be that to let technology and operators drive innovation. And let India be the hub of that innovation. I think that would be the other piece that I would submit to. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Rajesh. Yes, public-private partnership in making this happen is very, very important. And driving innovation is going to be key, especially in a country like India, where there's just so much diversity in how we implement and how a consumer consumes what we are actually providing as a service. Thanks so much for that, Rajesh. Rob, if I can request your intervention, what you think, because you obviously are looking at very, very different things, and important to hear your key point of view.
Yeah, really, Ravi drove it home with 70% of usage is video in the country, and that there's a big diversity of languages. So security is always first, but you have the UHF spectrum with the public broadcaster that is a vast resource for that distribution of video with next generation standards. So when you look at how you could distribute and that consumption, because it won't get small, it'll only get larger, and how do you handle that capacity? And you do have a way, and then we're launching it here in the States through this IP technology and next generation levered on to the transmitters, that you have a capability of expansion that way. But I'm really captivated on that 70% of consumption is video. And I to say it will grow. If we come back a year from now, Ravi might tell me it's 80%. So.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much, Rob. You've been true to form. You picked up really what was possibly the best data point for you, 70% with you. And I'm sure this is growing because I remember the way it's staggered. It's like a hockey stick in terms of growth. Thanks so much for that, Rob. Marc, can
Thank
I get you in? You gave some great examples of what you've seen as good light regulation was really helped. Your one comment that you'd like to conclude with.
Just, I mean, the word was already there. Collaboration is absolutely critical, but I would also say not only collaboration among telecom, but also looking at other regulators in other sectors, because we know that 5G will underpin the digitalization of many sectors. So we should also make sure that regulations in other sectors are not hampering digitalization, and there might be incumbent regulations that do so, and so those need to be tackled as well.
Very well said, Marc. Thank you so much. This is something that we as consultants also have been toying with the idea. This is going to be revolutionizing not just telecom or ICT, but all industries. And this is very important that it's not only about TRAI. In fact, TRAI can actually become the champagne of all regulations, for want of a better term. So that will put Chairman Dr. Vaghela in real hotspot of how he's going to drive possibly the other industries as well. So thank you so much for that. Rahul, last but not the least, you have the benefit of accumulating everyone's this. I know you made some great points in your initial or the first comments. What would you pick as one most important note for from a light touch regulation?
I think when we started on this journey around 7 years back, when PM gave us the vision of Digital India, I think we are at the cusp of actually transforming our society. Honestly, you would have never seen things what you never imagined, what we have done in 7 years. And I think what I'm honestly looking as a citizen also is that the regulator gives me the certainty and a framework. As operators, we just go ahead, do swift rollouts, and we are able to serve customers with quality and variety of services, right? And I think that is each one of us does our jobs. And at the end of it, so the framework is right. All the materials, we have discussed collaboration, execution. I think now it's time to do some action. And I'm sure with Dr. Vaghela driving, we'll have a fast lane ahead to be able to achieve what we are set out on.
Thank you so much for that. I think one key thing that I'll say out from what you said, or maybe alluding to, is that every supplier, every regulator, every government, every component is also the user. So we must use that standard to actually put back on all of this. So with this, I'd really, like to say a big thanks. I don't know how big I can call it out to be, but it's been a real education environment for me as well. I've been 2 decades in telecom and ICT, but this is, like I said, this is probably the best concentration of mind power on technology and telecom that I have come across. So thank you, everyone. And I know we've run well over time. Everyone stayed there. So thank you for keeping this time out and delaying your other appointments. I know Chairman Pai, Monica, Rob, you have a lot of busy day ahead, and Dr. Vaghela and the rest of the panelists in India. I know I've already eaten long hours in the evening. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope to continue our interactions. We really look forward to more comments and more guidance from all of you. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as at least I enjoyed bringing all this over to our viewers. Thank you so much. Have a good day and have a good night.
You anchored very well.
Thank you very much, and Shobhit.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure being on the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Vaghela. Thank you, Mr. Pai. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Monica. Rob.
Thank you.